Hello, and welcome to another edition of Your Therapist Needs Therapy, the podcast where two mental health professionals talk about their mental health journey and how they navigate mental wellness while working in the field. Today, I'm joined by Melissa Park. Melissa, thanks for joining me.
Yes, thanks for having me.
I'm excited. We were talking a little bit before I hit record. I think this is the first time I had social media connection where one of your followers found my podcast and said, "Hey, you should interview Melissa. That'd be really great." So, this is a cool collaboration.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. Yeah. My followers are wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. So what I always start with is how you got started in the mental health field.
Yes. And that's quite a complex question, isn't it? Honestly, when I think about the very beginnings of my work in the field, it it doesn't feel very directed. Like I wasn't thinking to myself, I want to be a therapist. In fact, I was quite lost as a older teenager going into school, not knowing what I wanted to do, coming off the heels of um, probably what I would say is like some developmental trauma and whatnot. So I was just kind of swimming,
Mm-hmm.
just trying to keep my head above water. I was in my bachelor's program and really went to one of those counseling appointments where they give you some tests to figure out, let's see what your major should be declared as. And lo and behold, social work was one of the ones that popped up for me. And so after just learning that there was probably a lot of opportunity with that in terms of what direction I could go with it, I wouldn't be kind of like pigeonholed into one specific thing. I thought, let's do it. And I'm really glad I did, because once I got into the practicum phase and got to be in the field working with kids and teenagers and families, I thought, ooh, this is really good. And then went on to do my master's and all the other stuff afterward. But probably maybe a little bit of just luck and helping me find that niche or that thing. But also I have to believe that, something spiritually probably for me, that this is just what I was supposed to do. I believe in that too.
Sure. Um, we're doing a lot of different interviews with other therapists. Like that's a very similar story of finding your way into the field and then kind of like navigating once you get started, like what the field looked like, because there's so much secrecy is the wrong word, but like there's a block in knowing what it's like to be a social worker or what it's like to be a therapist. Like what you see maybe in your undergrad is very different than what the profession actually usually ends up looking like.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, private practice wasn't the thing that was talked about right out the gate, for
Right.
sure. But and also, even working, I went to my undergrad up north in New York and then came down here for my graduate program. So I had different experiences too, even with that, in the field. But it definitely it all looked a lot different than like private practice. I experienced, which a lot of people do, I think, of just like rites of passage, working in agencies, working in settings that it's hard stuff to be in, to look at, to
Mm-hmm.
experience. Yeah.
And we're the same generation where we've been in the field for a while. Like I talk a lot about how we're not prepared for any sort of business ownership or private practice.
Mm-mm.
Like similarly, I was more of a straight therapy route, not social work, but still like it was all agency based. It was you're going to work in a hospital or you're going to go work at a big agency. And so like how was that journey for you to kind of find private practice and get into that and build it and make that be your focus?
Yeah, I think I would probably owe it all to the people that went before me. um, Finding myself in an agency and seeing other people doing it really gave me the hope or the idea that that would be possible for me, because I didn't know that that was possible.
Mhm.
And once I had that played out in front of me and I realized that, hey, that could be a path that I could take too, that's when it started to happen inside of me, brainstorming, figuring out, how do I make this work? What will it look like? And then talking to those people that were doing the, at that time, I saw them doing dual, like they'd be in the agency, but they would be doing a few private practice clients on the side, almost like
Sure.
dipping their toe, but eventually branching off, which is what I did, into full total private practice. Yeah, I think confidence had a lot to do with it too, and this sense of like believing in my own abilities. What is that? What is that complex that we all have where we just don't believe in ourselves, or we just don't?
Imposter syndrome.
Yes, the imposter syndrome. That's it. That was huge, probably, in terms of years of not taking those steps. And then finally just jumping and believing in myself, and uh, yeah, really honing in on my niches. Hmm.
Yeah, I have I don't know, I'm coming up, I think you're coming up on 20 years in the field. I'm coming up on 15. It
Yes.
doesn't seem like it's been that long. The field's starting to shift a little bit more towards, hey, you can have a private practice. Hey, you can just kind of hang your shingle and do just what you want to do and
Hmm.
help people that way. And like that's okay. That's good. That's valid, which I think is a great shift in the field.
I also think too, like, like accessibility as well. I mean, I'm lucky in that I have a partner who carries our insurance. I mean, I think about that too, that the dream of private practice isn't accessible for everybody as well. And so I'm very fortunate that I was able to make that shift, or feel like I could take the risk to make that shift to do full private practice. Because I don't think that's something that everyone, is fortunate enough to do.
Yeah. And I do think that kind of dual role of some agency and some, well,
That can
one of my
help.
issues with agency is they don't offer insurance all the time. But I think it's one of those things where, yeah, like
Hmm.
that confidence in seeing other people do it. We have people who are established in the field now. I mean, there's so many podcasts, there's so many resources for people. A lot more resources are available to young therapists for starting in private
I
practice and finding
I
their
agree.
niche and having confidence. Those things, those podcasts, some of that stuff didn't exist back in the day where we had kind of a blueprint for how to do it.
Uh, I agree 100%. Yes. Yes.
So, moving into kind of what your niche is, and the one of the things you work with that I want to talk about is working with trauma. How did you kind of learn about that? Where'd you get started? Was that part of your, or was that something you picked up once you were into the field?
Well, if I think about it, if I take that time, almost even right now, when did I get started? Well, it probably started right in the beginning. I mean, my first postgraduate job was working in a high management facility for foster kids. I mean, if that's not trauma, I don't know what is.
In working with trauma early in your career, do you feel like you had the resources from school and the training around that, or was that things where it's like, oh, you
Uh,
got thrown into this
that's a good question.
profession and you're seeing all this trauma, and then like, oh, I need to
Hmm.
go get certified, or need to go learn more about it.
Yeah, that's a great question, because, you know, really, my first postgraduate job was feeling like uh, being thrown right in. It was a high management facility for foster care kids, teens, children, and that's trauma. I mean, I was looking at it every day. And there would be basic trainings, but looking back, I'm not so sure that they were very trauma informed. Uh, and
Hmm.
so, really, a lot of the onus was on me, I think, to see these kids and to figure out really what the needs were beyond their behaviors. Their behaviors are what put them in this high management kind of subclass or whatnot. There was low management. And so really it was a lot on me, but I had such fire. I still do. I have fire and drive, which I'm really glad for. I don't feel very burnout. And so at that point, I was very excited. And so, yes, jumping in, the lack of resources, I went in and found them myself. So in terms of certifications and whatnot, I didn't pursue the ones that I have currently right out the gate because I don't think I knew that that's what I needed back then. But I certainly was pursuing things that I felt like, hey, there's something missing here. In addition to what little I was getting from those places. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's some of it's psychology being a little bit behind, where the research has taken a bit to catch up around trauma, because I do think,
Mm-hmm.
you said you didn't think it was very trauma informed, like the different ways that trauma could present and what I as a therapist could do with that in the room. I kind of was like, it was like an assessment point, like a box to check, as opposed to necessarily knowing what was affecting people on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So I think the field is catching up, which is good. What was your kind of experience getting into something like EMDR, and what was it maybe that style of working with trauma kind of drew you to working with that?
Yeah. So I remember this was no, I'm sorry, not inpatient, a partial hospitalization program setting / intensive outpatient program setting, PHP and IOP, that I worked at. And my manager was one of these people in my life that I realized, wow, she's doing she's doing the agency and she's doing the private practice. And she was certified in EMDR. So she's been certified way back in the day. She's probably been doing it for certainly well over 20, 30 years. And it was kind of one of those things. It's like, what is she doing? She's waving her hand in front of people's faces. But that's the first time that I learned about EMDR. And really, it felt quite mystical. I knew that she was doing amazing work. And a lot of her clients she was actually working with were DID. But that was probably my first introduction and what had me sort of hooked or intrigued about EMDR as a specific modality. I didn't jump right into it because, again, I was not realizing that I could be that one that not only works in a hospital or agency setting, but also doing private practice. For some reason, I think that there was this like block for me back then that I can't pursue all these really fancy certifications unless I'm doing private practice. I don't know what that was about. Maybe I'm just sitting with it now that maybe there was something to that. I did all the trainings that were required for the specific job, but pursuing major kind of certifications like EMDR or emotionally focused therapy, those things really didn't happen until I got my sight set on stepping out into private practice.
Do you think that block was like being newer in the field, or like needing the space of running a practice the way that you wanted, or was it finding the clientele specifically? Like, I think that space to know who you are as a therapist and who you can help and how you can help them, I think matters a lot in how we do the work that.
Yeah, I think it might have been a few of those things. I also, as I'm sitting and taking the time with it right now, I also just think it was um, like a timing thing as well. I was building a family, and yeah, so wanting to build those kind of skills or pour myself into certification or work in that way, I don't know that I was ready for that at that point. So I kind of look back with just compassion and like non-judgment, and just like think to myself, like, of course, that's where I was at. And those are the decisions that I made. Like, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's interesting. I'm sitting with it right now being like, oh man, I say this sometimes to clients because I like to think I still look somewhat young, just on how long I've been doing therapy. And like 15 years is a long time, but it's also one of those things where it's like, yeah, I look back and I've had these different chapters or these different kind of seasons as a therapist to get to that, like, I don't know, comfort or like that confidence around expertise.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I don't know.
And like you talked about starting a family or these different things. So like as a therapist, our lives aren't just our professional lives. Like we're people too. And so these other things going on might cause us to pause or not necessarily put off, but like just be in a different space than, oh, here's this next training or here's this next certification or this is exciting. I'm going to go do a 2-year, 3-year course in this thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've had some really significant life events that I I wouldn't have been able to pour myself fully, and feel the fullness of what I would be trying to do. Like, I really do love learning, and so some of these life events, it just, I wouldn't have been able to do the and in those situations of really getting the fullness, the juiciness of the pursuing the knowledge and the skill, while also attending to what I needed to attend in my personal life. And I really am big on the and I think we can find it most of the time. But at that point, I don't think I could, because of just the greatness of what some of the things that I was going through. And so I was, my cup was full with what I was doing in that agency or hospital setting at that time. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that's a scarcity mindset in the field? Do you think that was something, because I'm relating to that a lot, and I think a lot of the guests I've had on have had that similarly. Like everybody needs help, but we're not like low on mental health helpers. Like there is no competition within the field.
Yeah.
So is that, I don't know. I don't know. You're hitting a vibe with me too.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of like, I mean, I think scarcity mindset, like that's definitely, but help me know um, what that's tracking on, so that I can maybe say more, um, scarcity
Uh,
from, yeah.
well, I think being able to like find that place where you can give yourself fully, like not just to your clients, but to your personal life,
Mm,
but to maybe a training or something enriching for you. Like I think right early in my career, it was kind of an all or nothing type approach.
mm,
Like I was going to focus
mm-hmm,
on this thing professionally. And then, and I was, um, my spouse and I got married kind of young, but like I had a plan doing marriage therapy. That's my background. Of like, oh, we're going to be married for this number of years before we have kids and stuff. So it was very like compartmentalized, I think, as far as when I had time or what I thought time looked like for a training or to pick up more certification or practice the skill that I wanted to. It was always kind of, I would say, blocked off.
yeah. So now I'm understanding. Yeah. And like, there's something in me right now that wants to like acknowledge that probably was true then, maybe even in moments is a little true now, that I can get tripped up into this, like, got to do it all, or oh no. Especially with my relationship with social media lately, that's a whole nother topic, but I also want to have like this compassion for myself too, and that maybe that the thing isn't the thing all the time. What I'm specifically referencing about, like in my past, just one of the several different things, but the death of my mom, like when I think of that, like I almost, there's something in me that goes like, oh, the all or nothing thing doesn't really apply to that, because things like grief does take it all. Like
Yeah.
almost
Right.
like it's just so complex, right? Stuff like what we're talking about can really make sense sort of across the board, but then there's also these things like grief that it just doesn't fit sometimes, and that's okay. Because I might want to tell myself, like, yeah, during that time that you lost her or you were losing her, maybe there could have been some kind of, and like you could have given yourself some like grace or compassion to like learn a few things, and that would have been okay. But yet, like, there's also this thing in me that says, like, maybe that's not how it went for that particular issue. Um, and
Yeah.
thinking about doing the and with a situation like that just doesn't happen. Um, yeah, and
Yeah.
so that's
I think,
okay.
and that idea of self-compassion then, where being able to look back at some of those things with some grace, where the and might have been like getting out of bed and showing up for your
Yes.
kids, or and making it to your
Yes.
clients, not additional. Like it's not always and you don't need six and sometimes it's just one.
Yes. For sure. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like this topic of like learning more in that time. Like, um, not like it's like, oh, I'm frustrated to think about that. Not at all, but just like it almost doesn't even fit with that particular time. It's the and back then was probably just putting one foot in front of the other. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I talk about seasons all the time, and like to use nature metaphors in the work that I do, but like those there are different seasons for us. There are different seasons, and like for all of us as humans, but also for us as therapists, like where we're at professionally, but then what's going on in our personal life that maybe impacts where we're at professionally. And it's fluid. It's not linear all the time. It's not something that needs to look a certain way.
Yes. Agreed. So much. Hmm.
Um, Segueing again a little bit. I know another specialty of yours that I want to talk about that lights me up a little bit is the emotional focus therapy, doing couples work. Um, I come from a couples background. I started at an internship that had couples therapy and went into right into my postgrad for marriage and family therapy. So that's always been the way I practice. I'm always curious how people find like the couples work and then find those niche areas to work with it, doing something like EFT. So can you talk a little bit
Yes.
about kind of your journey into that?
Yeah. So, when I was in one of these agencies, it was that situation where I was supposed to work with couples and families as part of what I was doing, but there was no training. It was just kind of like, let's use your years of experience and the training that you've gotten through us for these individuals, and go ahead and apply that to working with couples that should do just fine. Now, that wasn't overtly said, obviously, but
Sure.
um, and so I was coming up against that feeling on the inside of me that, again, I'm missing something. This isn't enough. I'm not helping enough. I'm an Enneagram 1, so I'm not sure if you're know Enneagram, but it's like there's this drive inside of me that like I can it's got to be better than this. Like certainly there's got to be something better here. Like we can do better here. And so I was just on the hunt to find sort of a better tool, a better framework, and did some research and know that EFT is the gold standard for couples therapy for treating couples. And so, lo and behold, in my city, one of the amazing trainers, Lori Brubaker, was having an intro to EFT and the attachment injury repair model. And I was seeing lots of couples with attachment injuries. So I thought, let's do it. And then I immediately fell in love and went on to
Yeah.
sign up for every single training that was required for certification and finding the all of that. So yeah, because I thought this is what I've been missing.
Yeah. Which is awesome. And I think like, kudos to you, to recognize that you can't just take individual therapy and slap it on a couple and expect to get good results. It works sometimes. I'm not dismissing that, but it's a different thing having multiple dynamics. And then finding like having a good supervisor, not necessarily that was maybe, sometimes those things are luck, but like that really matters. I think working with some young therapists and looking back at my career, those mentors or those people that we have who kind of teach us, shepherd us, mentored us makes a huge difference, I think.
Oh, absolutely. My supervisor, I credit him completely for my ability to demonstrate proper use of the model and all the other things to get that certification for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was an intense certification process for EFT specifically. Like that is a couple of years journey for most therapists.
Oh, for sure. Of all of my certifications, that one is the one that about took me out.
Because that's recording stuff, that's submitting stuff. Like there's a whole big
Yeah.
process behind it.
Yeah. But
Um,
it's amazing. It's really as hard as it was, it's the one thing I'm most proud of. Hmm.
yeah. And I think those ideas around doing couples work and even I would say trauma, like the deepening of your knowledge as a professional like makes a big difference. Some of it is getting past your imposter syndrome, some of it is having a space to practice in the way that you want to practice, but also the clientele that you're seeing makes just a world of difference. I get so angry when people kind of stereotype therapy as like just asking how someone feels. Like no, there's a whole school of thoughts and all these things that go into being successful with it.
Yes. And there's something too about like having all that and then also being able to, also confidently tell clients that are reaching out, I'm not a good fit, or maybe we reach a place and actually I think that you'll need to take your resources of time and money and emotional space to a place where you'll get more of what's in alignment with your goals. Like there's something about that too. And I think way back when there was this feeling of you just have to fix whatever it is. You like in these agencies, whatnot, like this is what you have to do no matter what, even if you don't feel equipped. This is what you have to do. And so there's something different about being in this space as well. That's very freeing and just confidence boosting. I'm not sure what the word is, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think having clients that are good fit goes both ways as far as finding a therapist who's a
Hmm.
good fit for you, but also therapists finding clients who are good fits for them. Like I do agree. I think the agency I worked at, I didn't do my own intake. Somebody did the intake and then assigned the clients based on that. So it was like I had zero say in who was coming my way. I didn't know what was walking through the door most of the time as far as what clients were coming in. And so being able to communicate and touch base with clients and do some of that work ahead of that scheduled session, I think makes a world of difference to say, yeah, don't know if I'm going to be a good fit for what you're looking for, being able to say like, here's how I will approach this. If that sounds like a good fit, we can set something up.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So you said something earlier that I want to kind of go back, which is having a lot of joy for learning, not feeling like you've been burned out in the field. Like how how do you do that? Is my question. How have you done that? What does it look like now, or even just kind of if you're open to sharing some of that journey of taking care of yourself while you're in the profession to put off or avoid being burnt out?
I really wish that I could say that, like, I've intentionally done that. And these are the things that I've done to like create this thing inside of me. I really wish that I could, because I feel like I could probably write a book and then sell it.
Yeah,
um, but but I guess if I just take time with it, again, it kind of goes back to like feeling maybe support from my family and my partner for like um, and 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 my privileges of being able to have a schedule that feels good to me, where I'm not seeing 40 people a week. I have a very small caseload. I do a lot of, because of this trauma work and couples work, I only see 15 to 20 people a week.
yeah,
And
same.
and so that in itself, I think, helps me to not feel so overwhelmed. It helps me keep track of these people, know their cases personally, so that when I see them next time, I'm not like, oh my gosh, what did we, like, I feel connected each and every session with each and every client. That helps me a lot, gives me a sense of purpose and a sense of like, um, just that I'm good. This is good. That probably has something to do with it in terms of work, but I also do a lot of my own stuff outside. I'm in my own therapy. I do some somatic therapy, which I think is really helpful. I enjoy learning stuff. Like, I probably should do more reading for fun, but there's something about taking in all this fun knowledge about, how to love yourself better and love the people in your world better and your family better. That's just exciting to me. So I do enjoy listening to that, and reading about that kind of stuff, pouring
Yeah,
into my kids,
yeah,
just having a balance, I guess, of things outside of work, movement,
yeah. It,
trying best to take care of my
and you
body. Yeah,
and you highlighted that some of this has been learned behavior over time, not necessarily something you did intentionally,
absolutely.
um, which
Absolutely.
I think most therapists relate to. What Where did that balance kind of like start to feel more intentional? Like when did you become aware, or when did you start to be like, hey,
Mm,
like I can structure some of this, or I can like I need to do this for my own
yeah.
sanity or for my client or for my family? Like when did it kind of start to go from a thing that happened to a thing that you were actively doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I probably would say when I started to do a lot of these bottom up therapy trainings, whether it be EMDR or somatic experiencing or even emotionally focused therapy, there's something about the bottom up education and learning process as I'm taking stuff in for building my skills, but also the experiential piece where I'm having to do it for myself, that I was like, oh, wow. That probably was a big factor for me to begin to really notice that I could take time, space, and support and begin making some intentional changes, or just noticing in and of itself is huge. So it's probably when I started to really hone in on a lot of these niches that I've began to, see that there's some things that I could do to create more of that balance.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally relate to that. I think a lot of when I started to be serious about being trauma informed and working with that intellectual, I know this stuff, into a lot more like personal experience of like, right, just because I know this stuff doesn't mean my body works any different, doesn't mean that like I can outthink some of these things. I need to also do this work because my body's holding on to just as much stress as my clients. And I like, saying those things in session over and over again, you would think the light bulb would go off, but it was like that experience, seeing some of like how trauma works and how it affects the body, and those things. I was always like cognizant. I think it wasn't until kind of the trauma work that I was doing with clients and educating myself about trauma on like, oh, right, I can be more intentional with this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's how our clients probably feel too. At some point,
Yeah,
especially the ones that really are on this, like, that have the drive to read all the self-help, to want to be, to do better, to feel better. There's something that happens eventually for them too, that probably is their story. That once, whether my therapist or I did this thing, that I started to really pay attention to what my body was saying and what was happening on the inside, a shift happened. It wasn't just all cognizant head stuff. Yeah.
right.
And I'm still working on it every day. I mean, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of the mindfulness or yoga somatic work people I talk to refer to it as practice. I refer to like private
Yeah.
practice. Is still working on it. Like I've been doing these things for a while, and life never stops. Like you don't hit a point where like you're done.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Um, you talked about earlier maybe needing to read a little bit more for fun in your free time. What are you, whether that's for recreation and fun or that's related to the field? I like to kind of ask people what's on your bookshelf. What are you kind of consuming right now?
Oh, well, again, it's just all work related, but I'm currently reading Desire by Dr. Lauren Fogelmercy, and oh, I should know her lovely their co-authors. I'm so sorry for forgetting her name, but
We'll add it in the show notes.
yeah, I'm reading her. I'm also reading a new workbook that I just got from my mentor in the EFT field, Dr. Catherine Ream. She wrote a workbook for couples navigating loss through the EFT lens. So I've got that one. And then, of course, I do some listening as well. I've got my audibles always. Let's see. Oh, I'm rereading Come As You Are. I like to reread
Sure.
sometimes Come As You Are. And yeah, so that's just what's currently what I'm taking in. And then, of course, all the podcasts that I tend to listen to in the car.
Yeah. Are those therapy based things or mental health
Oh,
based
yeah.
things?
Yep. I'm list all EFT stuff. And then
Sure.
I read Good Inside by Dr. Becky Kennedy quite a long time ago. Recommend her stuff to even my couples, even though it's parenting oriented, but I think it's helpful for couples. And I stumbled upon, she has a podcast, the Good Inside podcast. So I've
Yeah.
been listening to that as well. But yeah.
Yeah. What's on the recreational side? Like, do you like to watch things? Are you like kid activities?
Ooh.
What's kind of what's kind of downtime look like in, or what is that? Maybe not
Yeah.
self-care. I always like to ask about like joy. Where's the joy? Not just stress
Hmm.
management, but what's like filling you up?
Yes. I love watching and playing sports with my kids. My my daughter is an avid volleyball player, and my other daughter is a softball player, and those were my sports growing up. So
Mhm.
watching them, but also playing in the yard with them, I love doing that. Um, Walking, ever since I can remember, walking has been something that just nourishes me. So I used to be able to walk my dog, but he's actually turning 17 in a few weeks and he can't take those walks like he used to, but I still
Sure.
love walking. I love lifting heavy things, working out. Um, when we can, I like going antiquing with my husband. I love
Sure.
antiques and just putzing around, looking for cool things. That's something that's really fun that I like to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Here's my most pointed question of the day. You probably can't
Okay.
see it. I have a volleyball jacket on. I've
Oh,
coached volleyball for
no.
many, many years. Um,
Oh,
how's your experience as a sport parent? I know those volleyball gyms, they can get pretty intense for those all day or all weekend tournaments.
yeah, that's another um, area that I'm learning about myself, learning who I want to be, how I want to be with her, figuring out what conversations are helpful, non-helpful. Yes, she plays club, so lots
Hmm.
and lots of tournaments. And actually, I just worked with the varsity team at our school district doing some sports psychology, which is a little bit outside of my niche, obviously, but it was really fun. And I see the importance of some of these things that translate to the court, things like performance anxiety and relaxation and mindfulness, trust. Uh, so
Hmm.
that was just interesting sidebar. But yeah, being a sports parent is it's it's something for sure. Makes me think about my mom and what it was like for her too. I think it's a lot different these days. A lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that club lifestyle, for those who are unfamiliar, is intense. These are usually 2 or 3 day tournaments. They're all day with few breaks in between. Like it's intense. Yeah, I coached
Yeah.
volleyball collegiately and coached club for many years. So um,
Oh, nice.
yes, speaking my
Nice.
language, I did mental health with student athletes, do a mindfulness exercise at the end of practice, and we just kind of like, but some really successful teams like that stuff. Yeah, it definitely makes a big difference. Sports is very, very mental.
Yeah, and yet I also found that I could also bring in the trauma-informed lens with some of that too. Like even just the slightest of
Hmm.
ways, like one of the activities that I did with them, using blindfolds, just saying, how is it okay to asking for consent in certain ways. Like I was able to kind of tie in the trauma-informed lens and a lot of that stuff as well. So yeah,
Yeah,
but I'm sure that you were a great coach.
like um, yeah, I had a good couple of teams for sure. But it's yeah, that lens of being aware of your body and regulating your system and knowing how to respond to
Mhm.
certain activation things. Like I,
Mhm.
I talk often about coaching is the same uh knowledge base I use for therapy. It's just applied in a different way. The context is
Yes.
different, but it's the same stuff.
Yes, yes. Totally agree. Mhm.
Yeah. My kids are a little bit younger yet, but yes, I'm aware of like the difference between being a spectator. I'm sure I will learn some things about myself as a being on the sideline as a coach versus being in the stands as a parent. So uh, it is an experience.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Melissa, when people want to find out more about your practice or about the work you're doing, I know you're a supervisor. Where can people go to kind of find you? Where can people kind of connect and find your information?
Um, a couple places. Certainly my website, which is melissaparkstherapy.com, and then any of my social media handles, which is Melissa Parks Says. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on TikTok.
Back after a bit of a social media hiatus, right?
Yeah, well, I took a little bit of a hiatus and I'm still exploring and being curious about my relationship with social media and just um yeah, almost just like I'm seeing what it's like to show up one day and then maybe just allow myself to do the sports thing and the self thing and the work thing and then maybe popping in again in a few days. I'm just kind of seeing how that is because for about 2 full solid years, I would make it a point to post every day and or to
Hmm.
engage somehow, maybe even multiple times every day. And so I'm just seeing what it's like to not do that because at some point that became uncomfortable for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such a realistic glimpse into kind of what we are talking about earlier with finding those balances in that space where it's on a spectrum where we're showing up in the way that we want to, but we're not trying to do too much and we're not um spreading ourselves too thin. I know like uh I did like a solid year of blogging, like one blog every single week, like 52 blogs, nailed it. And then I was like, I don't know that I have like that much to be saying every single week where I need to be like doing this regularly.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And don't get me wrong, I really and I think maybe that goes back to like how do I not get burned out? Maybe there's a parallel there. Like I really enjoyed it. I got
Yeah.
excited, like, when I would, listen to some things or I would have, like, this insight on my walk of, like, this interaction that I just had with my partner, I could totally, like, share this nugget with my social media followers, and I'd create this cool graphic or I'd create this cool post, and I'd be, like, jacked up, excited about it, like, there really was a lot of joy and it was creativity, it really was, um, but
Mhm.
somewhere, somehow, it just became a little bit less joyful, and it's okay. Like, but I listened, and so because I didn't want to just continue to post because I felt obligated or I felt like I was gonna lose followers or something. And when I felt that rub, I was like, okay, I want to still enjoy social media. I do like it. I remember that relationship. How can I save it? But just maybe it'll look different. And so I just let myself take that time. Um, yeah. And so I still enjoy it. I'm just figuring out like what it's going to look like now because it's never looked like this. It's looked like every day you post, every day you do the creative thing. So I'm just
Yeah.
open to just seeing how it goes. And but I also realize that the algorithm doesn't uh it doesn't applaud people for doing that, and so whatever, it'll be what it'll be, and the people that my posts will need to reach, I'm hoping that they'll reach.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that mindset of just like I found the creative outlet was very important for doing a lot of things. I used to coach and teach and do therapy and like I have ADHD, so all those things were helpful in a way, but getting to that point where like they weren't all joyful and or I wasn't showing up fully in the way that I wanted to. And so, right, like being intentional with that in the same way that I try not to be beholden to insurance companies, I try not to be beholden to the social media algorithms.
It's hard though when you see, like, I do have this I mean, I'm an athlete, I have this like drive, hunger, competitive spirit in me of like, hey, I see someone else, you know, doing these things and look what's happening with them. Like, they're, growing in this way, and like, hey, I want to do that. But so I've kind of also had to like take a look at myself and decide, pick my stress. Like, do I want to continue to do that just for these gains that I think I want? Or, yeah. So taking a good hard look at myself as well, and my goals, and, what I really want.
Yeah, for sure. I find the psych part of my brain, psychology background, loves the data that comes along with the social media and the algorithms and all those things, and like just that mountain of data you can have, and like my brain just loves to chew on that stuff, and being intentional with like, right, how are we using it, why are we using it the way we are. Like, it's very easy to, I think, get pulled in certain ways. And so similarly, like, I think just trying to be intentional with like where I'm at, and check in regularly, see what I want to be doing with it, and making sure that that's authentic for me, and not just because I feel like I need to. So, Melissa, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Yes, I've enjoyed it too. Thank you for having me on. It was nice to just
Yeah,
like
and
connect.
yeah, I'm always so grateful that people engaging and putting me on to other people, and finding other therapists who are working in similar ways or with similar clientele. It's always fun to connect with other professionals who are doing great work.
Hmm.
So we will have all your links in the show notes, and people can find you there. And all my stuff, as always, is at wellnesswithjoe.com. So all my stuff is over there, and links to socials and all that stuff will be in the show notes. So Melissa, thanks again for joining me.
Yes, yes. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, and to all the listeners out there, thank you for tuning in again. We will be back with another new episode next week. Take care, everyone.